Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Easy Programming. I'm Naveen Mishra and I'll continue teaching you how to write programs in C++ language. In the previous video I have told you about classes and objects and what are the SS specifiers. Now we will do some less theoretical topics but more of practical, in which I'll cover topics like scope resolution, array of objects and static members. Before watching this video, I will suggest you guys to please watch my videos related to arrays, classes and scope resolution, arrays, classes and storage classes, so that you guys can understand this topic easily. Okay, so let's start with this video. First of all, we'll start with member functions inside the class. Whenever you create a class, you define the functions inside it. Generally, we do define the functions inside the class. In such cases, we do not need a scope resolution operator. Now, what is scope resolution operator? I will explain it to you in this video. Such functions need not to be declared. You can define it inside the class and then use it in your main function and call the functions using objects. Okay, so but these functions are by default expanded inline. Now, what are inline functions? I will cover it some in the next video. Okay, now this is the syntax. Generally we do this, we create a class and we put the variables inside it. Let me show you what was that. So I'll write a program here, member function inside the class. So I'll declare the header file first, then conio.h. mostly we don't need that, but still, using namespace std. Now I'm creating a class, let's say employee, and inside this class I want to read a variable employee id and name of the employee. Okay, I can read the salary as well, so let's do that. Float for salary. Now by default these are in the private access of the class. I'll start the public access and I'll create a function getData. Now, since I'm defining the function inside the class, this is a member function inside the class. So I'll read the values here. Cout, enter, employee id, name and salary of the employee, cin, empid, name, salary. Now I'll write a function showData where I'll display these values. Now these are member functions inside the class. So functions inside the class. I'll create a main function and call the object here. We'll declare the object here and then call these functions. So getData and showData. Okay, I'll save this program. Let's compile and run the file. I'm writing the data here. There you go. These are the member functions inside the class. There's nothing different we have done this in the previous video. Now let's talk about the member function outside the class. In some cases we can define the functions outside the class. This is useful for the larger programs, so that we can come to know which functions are defined inside the class and which functions do not belong to class. We do this in that case. So to define the function outside the class, we have to declare them inside the class and assess them using and define them using scope resolution in the program, but not inside the class. There is no difference in calling the member function or assessing the uh, data of the class for such functions, as these functions are not different than the functions inside the class. The main feature of these functions is that you can define them outside the class. That's it, nothing else. And these functions are not inline. Okay, I do not prefer this thing. I generally define my functions inside the class, but yes, there is a method to write the functions in this way as well, so we should cover this. Now, to define the function inside the class, you have to declare it inside the class and then define the function outside the class using the class name and the scope resolution. Now, what is the scope resolution? I'll cover it in this video in the next slide. First, let's of all try to do that. So in this function, I'll change that. I'll remove these definitions from here and define it outside the class. Now, if I do this, there will be lots of error, like name and salary. We have not seen, you have not declared these variables, but actually I have declared it inside the employee class. Now these are the part of class, but this is not the part of the class. So what I'll do is I will declare it inside, and by doing so, these functions become the member of the class. Now, to define the member functions outside the class, you cannot define it like this. We have to define the return type followed by the class name, that was employee, and then the scope resolution. By doing so, this function is defined outside the class. Declaration is important, as the compiler comes to know that these functions are defined somewhere and they are only declared here. And this is used employee to tell that this get data belong to the employee class, which is defined here. Okay, so we'll do this again for the show data as well. And you see there is no difference in reading or writing the data in the functions. Okay, so these are the member functions inside the class as well as the outside the class. Okay, now let's move forward and talk about the scope resolution operators. Now, scope resolution operators are used to assess the variable or function which is not defined inside the given scope. For example, you want to assess the variable which is global inside the function. Yes, definitely you guys can do that, but what if the variables have the same name? In such cases, generally the local variable's value is accessed. To assess the value of global variable, you can use scope resolution operator. Okay, so it is by doing in the same way we define the function, we declare the function inside the class and define it outside the class using scope resolution. Okay, let me show you what is the usage of scope resolution. So I'll create a new program and I'll save my time by copying some of my data. Okay, I'll comment this, remove this thing, and we'll declare a global variable, let's say a equals to 10. Now let's say we have an add function. We inside the main function we are declaring a function int a again. Now before this, if we print the value of a, the value that will be printed is there you go, the global variable value is accessed. Now if we do this again, sorry, just a second, and if we do this again here, now this time as main function have its local variable a equals to 20, so it will print the value of a 20. So here the global variable value is accessed, but since we have the local variable a here, so when this cout is printed, it assesses this value 20, that is the local value. Now what if I want to display the global variable value? Now to assess the global variable value, what I can do is I can use this scope resolution. Now, using scope resolution, I can get the global variable value, that is a equals to 10. So the scope resolution operators are used to assess the variables which are not inside the assess of the given function. Okay, and in the same way we were defining the assess of these get data and show data to employee. Since although we are defining the functions outside the class, but still they are the members of employee class, and their scope is inside the employee. This is defined using the scope resolution operators. Okay, so let's move forward now. After scope resolution, let's study about the instance variables. Now instance variables are the variables that are defined inside the class. So all the variables that you guys are defining here are the instance variables. What is that? They belong to objects, and every object have their own copy of such variables. That is, if I create another object here like employee E2, new copy of these variables will be created, and I can put different value inside these objects. So I'll call the get data for E2 and show data for E2. So let's do that. So employee ID is, let's say, 1001, name is Joe, and salary is like this thing. Okay, now after printing the object of E1, it reads the value again, and let's say I put another value 1002 for Doe, and I put the value. There you go. So this data belong to E1 object and this data belong to E2 object. Two different objects contain two different values, and these are called instance variables. Every time you create an object, a new copy of such variables are created, and these are also called object variables since they belong to object. That's why they are also called instance variables or object variables. So these are your instance variables or object variables. Okay. For example, we have done this. In this example, I am creating a class A and declaring three variables ABC. These all are local variables. If you create this object A1, A1 will have the copy of ABC, and when you create the object A2, you have the another copy of object A2 ABC, and you can put different values inside this A1 object and this A2 object. So these are the instance variables. Now what are the static variables? If you define the function variable inside the class using a static keyword, then these are called the static variables or the class variables. Irrespective of how many objects you guys create, only one copy of such variables are created which belong to class rather than the objects. And as you guys must know that static variables are automatically initialized to 0, so same thing here, they will be initialized in 0. Memory space allotted to these variables are for lifetime. So as long as your program is running, your data is visible and safe inside the static variables. And since they belong to the class, they are also called class variables. Now let's understand it with an example. Now let's say I will create a class in the program that is class salesman, and inside the salesman I have two variables like int a and static int count. Now when you create the object of these salesmen S1, S2, S3, then three objects will created S1, S2, S3, and they will have an independent copy of A, which and they can have their different values like 10, 20 and 30. Okay, and since count is a static variable, irrespective of how many objects you create here, only one copy of these variables, this variable will be created and shared by all the objects. Now let's say S3 object changes its count value 0 to 20, then S2 and S1 values for count, S1, S2 values for count will also be 0. Okay, so only one copy of count variable will be created since it is a static variable, and they will be shared by all the objects. Okay, and then let's talk about the static functions, and I will write a program for variables and functions in a single class. Just like static variables, you can create a static member function as well. What is the advantage of creating a static function? The main advantage is that you can call the static functions without creating the object of the class. So you don't have to create the object to access the member that is static. You can call them directly using the class name. But in such case, you guys have to create a scope resolution operator. Okay, and they have one limitation as well, that they can only access the static members and static functions, but not the instance variables or instance functions. Now as I told you, to call these functions you have to use the class name as well as the scope resolution operators, and they do not have access to this pointer. Now this pointer I will again cover it in the upcoming videos. So let's say this is the syntax and example. So you just have to write the static keyword in the definition of of your function, and when you call this function you don't have to create the object. You can directly use the class name followed by the scope resolution and then the function name and the arguments. Now let's try to do that first. Let's try to write the program for static variables and static functions. So what I'll do is I'll create a class salesman, and we'll create three objects of that class, s1, s2, s3. All these objects will represent an individual salesperson who guys will sell their product at their own, and they have their own count, as well as I will also count the total sale done by all three objects using count variable. So let's try to do this. Program of static variable and static member function. Again, I'll save my time, just a second. So let's create a class salesperson, the salesman, and we'll create a instance variable int personal sales, personal count, that is a static variable, instance variable, and we'll create a static variable that is a total count. We'll declare the public, we'll define the public access, and first of all I'll read the get sales count. Read the how many sales is done by an individual person. See out, enter the total sale, enter the sales, okay, and I will save it inside the personal count, and we'll add this value to my total count. Total count plus equals to personal underscore count. So this function I will call it for every object, and I'll use void show sales count. See out, sales done by the individual person equals to personal underscore count, and we'll create a static function, static void display total count, and will display the total sales done total underscore count. I'll create three objects here representing three persons: salesman, s1, s2, and s3. I will call s1 dot get sales count for every function, then s1 dot show sales count, then s2 dot get sales count, s3 dot get sales count. Individually I will call the display total count, so I'll say salesman scope resolution display total count, and I will call it for every object, and we'll call this method as well for every function. Let me change the name to s3. For sales person 1, this is for sales person 2, and this is for sales person 3. Static methods. Now let's try to compile and run this file. I know I will make lots of mistakes. Let's try to cover them. Now first of all, it says undefined reference to total count. Okay, so I have to, this since it is a static variable, so I have to do this int salesman scope resolution total count equals to 0 to set the static variable value to 0. Now let's try to do that. Enter the sales, so I'll say 10. Let me correct the outputs so you guys can understand it better. session. Okay. And okay. So first of all, I'll run my program for salesperson 1. Okay, this salesperson 1 is running, and I'll put the value like 10 sale is done by the individual person. Now individual sale is 10 and the total sale is 10. Initially it was 0. Once the sale is done by the salesperson 1, it is incremented, so 0 plus 10 equals to 10. Now salesperson for second person, I'll say, let's say 30. Now individual sale for that person is 30, but 30 plus old total count was 10, so 30 plus 10 equals to 40, so total sales done is 40. Now let's say the third person sells 50. Now you see the individual sale for that person is 50, but the total sales done is 90. So this total sale is printed because of this static variable total count, which retains its value, and that value only belongs to class and not to object. Okay. Now you cannot print the value for personal count here. Let's see if it works, or it gives you an error message. So let's see this. Now it says in static member function this you are printing the value of the personal count. Since personal count is not static, so you cannot do that. So this is the limitation of static variable, that they can only call the other static data. If you try to call the sales count, let's see if it works. No, you cannot call the normal function as well, since it is not static. So if your function is static, you can only call the static data and not the any other data. Okay. So these are the static variables as well as the static functions. All right. Now let's move on to the next topic of array of objects. Now till now we are creating a class and we are reading the values for a single object or 2 objects or 3 objects. Now what if I want to read the values for 100 objects or 50 objects or 60 objects? In such case I can create an array of objects. Okay. Now array of objects can be used for printing 100 or 200 data type objects. Okay. Just like basic data type, you are creating an array, you can create an array of objects as well. Okay. They can call the members using dot operator, similar to the arrays that we were using in the structures. You can use the same way and access the members using the dot operator. So this will be the syntax: class name, array object name, followed by the size. And for example, this is bank B100. I'll write the program for you. Just a second. Let's cover this first. Accessing members in the array of objects. So simply dot operator can be used. Okay. Just you have to pass the index as well, that which index array object you are referring for. Okay. And it's better to create a loop for the array of objects methods, as you don't want to write this line again and again for 100 objects. Okay. I will write this program for you guys. In this program I will read the bank details for 3 or more customers and will display this menu for every object. Okay. So let me write the program for you guys, and again I'll save my time. Array of objects. So salesman will be converted to bank, and I will use int account number, char name 24, reading the name of the customer, and float balance. I will write 4 functions. First of all, create account, where I will ask the details, enter the account number, comma name and balance. Okay. So I will say cin ACC number, then the name, and then the balance. Okay. And then I'll use display ACC, and we'll display the data here. Cout /n ACC number /t name /t balance, cout /n ACC number /t name. t balance. Now to display the to deposit the amount, I'll create a function void deposit. I'll ask the value cout, enter the amount to deposit, cin. I'll create a temporary variable here, just a second. Int, temp, read the value in temp, then add this value in the balance. And to withdraw, I will repeat this function and I will use void withdraw and enter the amount to deposit will be converted to enter the amount to withdraw, and in just I simply convert it to minus. Now I don't need this, and I will create the array of objects here. To do this, I'll say bank space b3, and for I'll declare a variable loop int I, and I'll say for I equals to 0, I less than 3, I plus plus, and I'll call this 3 times bi dot create account, and I'll do this, copy this line cout slash list of bank accounts and I'll convert it to show account. What was the name? Display account, sorry. Array of objects. Let's try to compile it in my file. So this is for the first object. I'll say 1001 Joe, and the balance is 10,000. I'll create another object 1002 Doe, and I'll put the balance. And for another, I'll say 1003 4, and I'll say 14. There you go. This bank details are shown to me, but you see here account number and name balance. This line is printed again and again. If we print this line only once and then print these lines, and that will be a better idea. So let's do this. What I'll do is I'll just simply copy this line and put it here so that it will only be printed only once. Let's see. 1001 Joe, 1002 Joe, and 1003 4. So there you go. It looks better now. Now as you guys see, I'm not giving you options for to press 1 for creating an account and press 2 for this. So I'll do this inside the switch case. So I'll put a switch case here, cout slash n press 1 for creating an account, cout, just a second, for display account details, that is 2, sorry. I'll copy this and I'll say press 3 for withdraw deposit, and press 4 for withdraw, and I'll create another cout. I'll say press 5 for exit. I'll read it inside an n variable, so I have to declare an n here, and we'll use the switch function. And for case 1, I will say b dot create account, and we'll put a break statement. As you guys know, after every switch case we have to put a break statement. So case 2 bi dot display, break again, case 3 bi dot deposit, break, case 4 bi dot withdraw and break, and then case 5 so exit. I think this function will work, I'm not sure. And default cout selection wrong input, please try again. Okay, and this thing I'll comment it here. Okay, and I'll move these lines in the display section, and I don't need this thing here. Now since I have to set I equal to 0 here, I'll tell you why. Now what I am doing is I am doing it for one function only, one object only. If I press 1 and I put the values here, name let's say Joe, and the balance is 12,000, you see here your program exits here, because the switch case runs for one time and then it ends. Now what we want is, I want to continue displaying this message again and again as long as user wants to see it, and when user presses 5 we exit. So for this purpose I can put it inside an infinite loop. So while true, I'll put all the switch case inside the function. Now let's see if it works. So press 1 and I'll put the details here, and to display I'll press 2 and it displays me the details. For 3 it asks me the amount, I'll say 5,000, and I display this amount again. So you see the balance is adjusted. Here we have 12,000, after adding 5,000 it is 17,000. If I press 4 and withdraw some amount, let's say 7,000, it is withdrawn, and if I print the message again, it shows me the balance. Okay, now it works fine, but it is working only for the one object. Now let's try to do this for multiple objects. Now what I have to do is, every time user presses this 1, I have to increment this value of I by 1. So I'll say I plus plus after reading the value for 1. And when the amount is, when this account balance is to be displayed, what I have to do is, I have to start a loop j from 0 to less than of I. Let's say you have only passed one value, so my loop will start for 1 only, and so on. And instead of b, I'll say bj. I'll not run a deposit and withdraw functions for now. Let's see if it works. Now I'll press 1, I'll put a value 1001, account number, let's say name is Joe, and I'll put a value here, and I'll display this value. So it displays me only one value. Okay, just a second, I think I made a mistake here. Okay, just a second. Why it is doing that? For loop, I don't think it was required. And I'll put a slash in here. Now once the value is j is equals to 0, j less than equals to I, it prints the value of display account, then incremented by 1 plus 1. Okay, let's see what is the problem here. We'll cover it. Okay, and let me do it for again, run this program again. So I'll press 1, my account number, let's say 101, Joe, 12,000, again 1, 102, do 15,000, and I'll say display. It displays me the values, but it is printing me the loop for one extra time. Why is that? Let me check. Int j I equals to 0. Okay, okay. I equals to -1. I equals to 0 will work. 0 and 0 plus plus. I have to do this for less than as well, because this I increment is done for one extra. Okay, let's see now. So press 1, 101, 12,000, and I'll display. Okay, it works fine. I have put another account 1, 1002, 2, and I'll say 15,000, and I'll print the value again. I put another value 1, 1003, and I'll say 4, and you see it is working fine. Now I'm creating dynamic objects and putting the value in them. Now instead of 3 you can do the 300 here as well. Okay, so it works fine. Now for deposit and withdraw, before depositing we have to ask the account number from the user. So see out, enter the account number. In ACCNO, I'll declare a temporary variable ACCNO here. Now we'll see if this account exists or not. So we'll copy this loop and just a second. Sorry. If ACC number equals to bj dot to assess these variables I have to declare them protect public, so I'll declare it public here. So, okay, and I'll say bj dot ACC number, then we'll BCC number, and we'll say we'll use a flag variable here. Int f equals to 0, f equals to 1, and I'll break, and if f equals to 1, I'll say cout slash n welcome. I'll print the name, so I'll say bj dot name, and then I'll ask the amount, and we'll call this function bj dot deposit, and else I'll say cout slash n invalid account number. Let's see if it works. Then we'll copy it for another for withdrawal. Let me check, see if, let's hope it works. bj dot name. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to declare the variable here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, what is the problem here? Process initialization of int f. Why is that? Let me check. If f is equals to 1, it should work, else it should say invalid account number, and int f equals to 0, and let's put this variable as global. So I'll do this. Let's see if it works now. Yeah, it works. Hopefully, let's see. 1, 101. Name is Naveen. Sorry, Joe. I'll say 12,000. I'll create another account. 102, 2, 15,000. Now let's try to deposit the amount. It asks me the account number. I'll say 1005. And since I do not have the account, it shows me invalid account number. Now let's see what accounts we have. We have 1001 and 1002. Now I will press 3 again, and it will ask me the account number. I'll say 102. It says enter the account. Okay, welcome to and enter the amount to deposit. Let's say I'll put 3,000 more, and will display the amounts again. As you saw, it is increment, as you see, it increments the value of balance of dough by 15,000. So it works perfectly. Now I can copy that for withdrawal as well. And what I have to do is I just have to call the function differently. Okay, so I'll copy this, I'll put it here, and I have to change the message, and I have to do withdraw. Okay, and just a second. I think it should work now. Okay, I have to put this variable as well outside the class. Do that, and then I have to remove this line. So I'll say 101. Sorry, 12,000. Again 102. 15,000. 3 for deposit. I'll put 1,000 more. Will display these details. Okay, it works fine. Okay, it was 100. Okay, 100 doesn't exist. I'll try again. I'll put 3 and I'll say 1001, and I'll put 500 more, and will deposit these details again. You see, and let's try the withdraw now. 4, and I'll put account 1001, and I'll remove 2500 from my account. Now it works fine. Let's see. Yeah, it works fine. And on press 5 you can access that. Okay, so I think this program is very useful for you guys. I will extend this program where I will read these values. Instead of putting the account number by yourself, I will show this value to the user at runtime, and this account number will be auto incremented using the static method. Then we'll put the constructors in it, then we use the inheritance in it. So we will cover all these topics in this program, and I will cover all these topics inside my video tutorials. So that's it from today. Thank you very much for watching my video. I hope you guys like this video. Please do subscribe and share to my channel. Thank you very much. Cheers.